It is my belief that Enron's failure was due to a classic run on the bank.
Don't look now, but there's something funny going on over there at the bank, George. I've never really seen one, but that's got all the earmarks of being a run.
On December 2nd, 2001, less than 4 months after Skilling's resignation, Enron declared bankruptcy.
I remember it was just a strange kind of a surreal day. We learned around 9:30 about the bankruptcy and that we were all being let go. We all felt like we were on the Titanic and the last lifeboats had long gone and we were just now on the sinking ship. We had 30 minutes to leave the building, and at that point, it was no longer like being on the Titanic. It was kind of like being on the Lusitania. The torpedo had hit, and there's 20 minutes to get out.
There was a lot of disbelief. Very few of the rank and file people ever dreamed that Enron would actually go bankrupt. And then all of a sudden it was like a ghost town. I can remember going into the old building on certain floors late in the afternoon or evening, and it was scary. There'd be like papers blowing around and nobody there, and it was very eerie.
Mr. Skilling, your opening statement was extremely compassionate to the employees. And I want to show you a tape, and I believe we have it ready to go. Listen to this.
Should we invest all of our 401k in Enron stock? Absolutely. Don't you guys agree?
Why is it that you had begun unloading your stock pretty heavily before that date, and yet led the employees to think they should keep buying stock?
Ms. Senator, I have been a major shareholder in Enron Corporation, and you can take the videotape to mean what you want it to mean. I was a supporter of Enron Corporation.
You know what happened to those people. They lost everything.
I feel terrible about what happened to the employees.
Well, at one time, things were really rosy for us, and we all had some really nice-looking 401ks and pensions, and it peaked, and then it just started going down and went lower and lower and lower. The peak, I had about $348,000, and I sold it all for $1,200. Was what I got for it when it was done.
While Enron's stock was plummeting, the retirement accounts of Enron's rank-and-file workers were frozen.
We were frozen out of our accounts. It was right about $32, I believe. And over that time, from when it was frozen to when it opened up, I think it went down to 9. And we could not access it. And what came out later that was so bad was the fact that Ken Lay and Skilling and all the top people were moving their money then. But we couldn't.
The insiders had sold off $1 billion of their stock. Compare that to the lineman who worked for a state-owned utility company for most of his life, put away money each month, and what's he have to show at the end of the day for his years of hard and decent labor? He gets a big goose egg. And Pi is out in Hawaii somewhere with $350 million in the bank. That's wrong.
There's still, to this city, a layer of anger and upset. I am still doing counseling 3 years later with some families. With some of those who are most reflective, it's gone to a deeper layer. And they are looking at the corporate culture itself in this country. You know, you can gain the whole world, and all the trinkets and all the trophies of the world, the corner office, and all the perks. And you really can lose your soul in the midst of this.
On January 25, 2002, 7 weeks after the Enron bankruptcy, Cliff Baxter committed suicide.
With the media hounding him because he was mentioned in my memos, and the fact that he had been sued civilly because he'd cashed in for about $30 million worth of stock, I guess it all came crashing down on it. I think Cliff's suicide note tells it all, you know, where there was once great pride, now there is none.
It's very hard for me to talk about Cliff. We were very close for many years. And he was a wonderful, wonderful man. But a lot of who Cliff was tied up in how he had succeeded at Enron. It is hard to look at your life's work and say, it's failed. But you have to take a long, cold look at yourself and say, who was I? Who did I become? And realize that you may have seen your shadow.
Andy Fastow pled guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. He agreed to forfeit $23 million in assets. His sentence was reduced to 10 years in exchange for testifying against other Enron executives.
Why Enron? Why not WorldCom or Tyco or Global Crossings? Ultimately, in Enron, the fatal flaw was the sense that brains and wiliness could outthink the way that the system eventually will work.
In 2004, Jeff Skilling was indicted for insider trading and conspiracy to defraud investors. Pleading innocent, he paid his attorneys a retainer of $23 million to defend him.
Enron should not be viewed as an aberration, something that can't happen anywhere else, because it's all about the rationalization that you're not doing anything wrong. We've involved Arthur Andersen, we've involved the lawyers, the bankers know what we're doing. There's a sense, the diffusion of responsibility. Everyone was on the bandwagon, and it can happen again.
Enron's accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, was convicted of obstructing justice. With its reputation for honesty destroyed, America's oldest accounting firm fell along with Enron, and 29,000 people lost their jobs. Enron shareholders are suing Enron and its banks for $20 billion. Ken Lay was also indicted for conspiracy to commit fraud. His attorney maintains that no one has been hurt more by the Enron bankruptcy than Ken Lay.
With today's arrest of Ken Lay, the top echelon at Enron has now been called to account for their crimes.
Mr. Lay, you have anything to say, sir? A little later today, I'll help.
Looking at Enron is like looking at the flip side of so much possibility, because like most things that end terribly, it didn't start out that way. It started with a lot of people who thought they were changing the world, and over time they became victims of their own hubris, victims of their own greed, and so it's like taking so much promise and possibility and looking at it in a mirror and seeing the flip side reflected back at you.
I think the larger lesson was what Enron asked of its employees, which was ask why. And, you know, I didn't ask myself why enough. I didn't ask managers why enough. I didn't ask my colleagues why enough.